Oh, hello. I just thought I'd have another vlog. No, I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about. I wanted to just do one of the open ones. I've toyed with the idea of picking on certain subjects, but I suppose I've got to start somewhere with this thing. When I think about the reading that I've done recently, there's been a lot of reading on health and nutrition. So I looked specifically at fats because I was very curious about fats and how they influence our, well-being, because you get mixed messages, or I used to at that point. I think it was 2 years ago. I just felt that I'd heard that fats are good for you, but they're bad for you, and I just wanted to explore that. And so where I already started was a book called Know Your Fat by Mary Enig. Let me just grab it. This is the book, Know Your Fats, the complete primer for understanding the nutrition of fats, oils and cholesterol. And there was organic chemistry in there, the actual triglyceride structure of certain fatty acids. The key bits, I'm going to try and jog my memory about it, because I thought I'd do this a little more in depth actually. The key bits were that one thing that's particularly bad in our processed food world that we live in is something called trans fat. It's an American term, I believe. Basically, it is hydrogenated fat of some description, generally vegetable fats. So they hydrogenate the fat, which creates an extra hydrogen bond in the actual chemical structure, but it's a what they call trans bond, and as a result is bad. The body doesn't know how to deal with it. The reason they do that partial, I think they call it partial hydrogenation, is to make the vegetable fats solid at room temperature. So you get a lot of them that are in spread format, but you also get a lot of it in processed food of varying descriptions. There are natural trans fats found in red meat or meats, I think, in general, and they're okay. So our body can deal with a certain amount of trace trans fats which are found in nature, but it's the man-made ones that really cause havoc on the body, from what I've read. And as I was saying, I wanted to go back to coconut oil because that's the one fat or oil. We call it an oil because at room temperature it's liquid. That's the one fat that has a lipid profile that has something like 86% saturated fats in it, and it's the closest thing to human breast milk in its lipid profile. They actually use coconut oil intravenously for critically ill, malnourished and dehydrated people in hospital. So it just shows you the power of coconut oil. I'll keep on this train of thought, but the other key point that I wanted to make about coconut oil was that there's two things, actually. One is that it is supposedly the most stable oil that you can use to cook with because of its saturated fat composition. They don't go rancid when you heat them, despite the fact, and this was the second point, that coconut oil has a relatively low smoke point compared with other oils. So although it smokes at a lower heat, I think it's like 170 or something like that, so 175 Fahrenheit from memory, it still stays, it doesn't rancidify, so it doesn't cause oxidation in your body as easily as something like olive oil. I mean, you really shouldn't be roasting anything with olive oil or cooking at high temperatures with olive oil because of its composition of fats, and their susceptibility to oxidate and to rancidify. And I learned also that you should really be storing olive oil in the fridge to keep it from oxidating. So I keep it in the fridge now. The difficulty there is obviously it solidifies in the fridge, so you have to pull it out in advance of any salads or anything like that. I don't cook with olive oil now based upon what I learnt. So yeah. So there's that bit, and it's such a shame, really, from extending my reading as well on saturated fats, is that we've been taught since I think 60s, 70s that sat fats are evil, bad things, cause heart disease, and just general carnage in your body. But from what I can gather, it was a lie that was propagated by a chap called I think his name was Ansel Keys, and in the 70s he studied the amount of saturated fats in Western cultures in Western nations' diets, and plotted it against the amount of saturated fat against the amount of heart disease for that country. The study involved tens and tens, so I think over 20 nation states, but what he did is he cherry-picked the nation states that showed a positive correlation between the amount of saturated fat and heart disease, and the instances of heart disease, and he omitted from the data those countries that were outside of it. Now France is an anomaly to that because it has relatively low instances of heart disease, but has high amounts of saturated fat consumption because they have a rich diet of pâtés, etc. But there's lots of theories around why there's lots of different variations and variables really that could affect that, because they drink a lot of red wine, etc. as well. But there were anomalies, and so it really didn't answer the question what has caused the massive increase in heart disease since the 1950s. But there was another chap called I think his name was, I'm just trying to look for the book right now, but I think his name was Ludkin or something like that nature. He wrote a book basically at the same time refuting the argument around saturated fats being the cause of heart disease, but instead looking at the studies into the effects of sugar, specifically fructose, on the human body at the time. And he believed that it was sugar that was the main cause of heart disease and increase in diseases. I really want to find the name, because I know a lot of the information I'm putting out here isn't right bang on target. It was a bit fuzzy in the head, but I really did want to find that book. I will find it at some point. I'm just not going to find it now. If I'm going to be able to do this in a more in a very sharp manner, I'm going to have to make sure I get all my references and plan. But and it looks like it was fructose all along, because from what I've seen, the people coming out of the doctors coming out of UCLA, UCSF, they are basically concurring with this guy, Ludkin, which I think is his name, by saying that yes, absolutely indeed, fructose is a poison. This is toxic to the human body. And we look at the amounts of sugar that have gone into the Western diet since the beginning of the 20th century, when we used to consume like less than a fifth of the amount of total amount of sugar in grams that we do today, which is more like 80 to 100 grams of sugar a day. Back then it was like 10 to 20 grams of sugar a day, and a lot more saturated fat, and the instances of heart disease were a lot lower comparatively. So yeah, a big scam. And it looks like it was the sugar industry that got behind this whole Ancel Keys argument that saturated fats were the cause of heart disease. They got behind it, the lobbyists got in there, the sugar industry started to protect their interests, and especially in America, where we see a lot of this type of food coming from, obviously. Obviously there was a big market for corn syrup, which is, they've got a lot of cornfields, and they use it to create high fructose corn syrup, which is what they put in everything. We don't have it in as much abundance here, but we still do have it. We call it high fructose corn syrup, I think, but slightly different name here, but essentially the same thing. So fructose, I mean, looking at what they've said about fructose, it's Dr. Robert Lustig is the chap from, I think he was from University of California, LA or San Francisco, I can't remember which one, but he wrote a book called Fat Chance, and it really goes into this in detail. Basically, fructose creates ROS in the liver, which is reactive oxygen species, essentially oxidation of the liver, and it leads to fatty deposits inside the liver disease, essentially. And it's just like the precursor to a lot of disease. And they don't call, these people don't call obesity a disease in itself. It's they call it metabolic disease. That's what it's not called it. They didn't call it obesity. They call it metabolic disease because essentially obesity is just a symptom of not being able to metabolize glucose properly. So it's kind of like, you know, if you're obese, then you're going to be diabetic, or you're going to be pre-diabetic at least. So it shows you, doesn't it? Obesity. Basically, if you have too much fructose, you have too much glucose, you have too much sugar, you have too much glucose running through your veins, then over time your cells become, the receptors become resistant, so you become glucose resistant, which is obviously type 2 diabetes. And also, if you've got a lot of glucose in your blood, the leptin, which is a hormone secreted from your fat cells, do not make it to your hypothalamus, which is the part of the brain that controls your behaviour when it comes to food. So if the leptin signals aren't getting to the brain assumes that there are no fat deposits, and the brain then goes into starvation mode. So you have a vicious cycle. When you have too much sugar, your body is in a vicious cycle where it thinks it's starved, so it does everything it can to, one, conserve the energy that you have, and two, to make sure you consume as much food as you possibly can. So you can see how if you've got too much insulin running through your veins, because it's the insulin that delivers the glucose, the leptin signals are blocked, and therefore you just eat more, you're hungry, and you're tired a lot. You're tired because your body's trying to conserve energy. So you become lazy, and you become starved. You feel starving. You can't satiate your appetite. And this is why when you eat coconut oil, or you eat coconut, you'll find that your appetite is suppressed a lot, and your energy levels increase, because you're turning your body into a fat metabolizing system for energy generation and consumption. So you go into fat metabolism. So you're burning. The coconut oils, they go straight from the gut straight into the liver in the form of ketogenic energy. Ketones, as I mentioned before, will power your cells, provide energy. It's a different chemical pathway into the cell, but it provides an alternative source of energy to glucose. Yeah? So bam, there you go, straight away. You've completely changed your life around if you consume coconut oil and coconut in good quantities, because it'll stop your appetite.